Clemson basketball is on a West Coast road trip and they're feeling good right now.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the number one sports podcast network that is out there, and that is due to you, respect to all of you, Monday through Friday, the everydayers that stick with us, that tune in, that hit that like, hit that follow, hit that subscribe so they never miss another episode. And if you're the 60 to 65% of you who are not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Get in there, hit subscribe so you never miss another episode. We talk all things Clemson all throughout the year and all throughout the week. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Thursday night edition of the show, we'll talk about Stanford and the win, all basketball tonight, players that we're loving, and the next three games that are coming up. I know you want some basketball thoughts, so I'll give you some of my basketball thoughts. But again, thank you for tuning in. You can always follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show in between episodes. All right, so let's slow down for a second and let's talk about what we watched last night with Clemson basketball, because every win kind of tells you a little bit about what this team is all about. Some wins, are about the talent and the superstars and the power that you have on the team. Some wins are just straight up about making the shots. And some wins are about like one guy just kind of taking over. And then there are wins that tell you whether or not a team or what a team is really actually about. And Clemson continues to show us who they actually are, what they're actually about. And this win against Stanford was no different than what we've seen with Clemson for the past couple of weeks and really this whole season. Was it really pretty? It wasn't super pretty, wasn't super exciting in many cases. It wasn't smooth the whole entire game. Clemson didn't really feel comfortable the entire game either. I mean, it was close there up until the very end. But that's why this type of game matters. So tonight I want to talk about the show. I want to talk about the game and why the Stanford game mattered, what did it really showed us, and the players that I'm loving from the game. And then finally, we'll kind of wrap it up with the three games coming up next and my thoughts as well. Clemson goes on the road and beats the Cardinal 66-64, although they were up 66-62 to the very end. I mean, they gave them the last 2 points at the very, very end. But if you didn't watch the game, you might think, man, solid road game, barely won. And it was kind of a back in the fourth grinder, if you will. It was very late. It was hard to stay up. A lot of you that stayed up were excited to do so, but like really almost a midnight tip, for me at least, it's way past my bedtime, but late tip, cross-country travel. The referee is kind of tight on the whistle. Young guy on the court scoring it on the other side of the ball who wasn't scared of Clemson at all. But there's one thing that really jumps out to me. This is the kind of game that Clemson probably would have lost a couple of years ago, maybe even just as early as last year, because this game had everything you needed stacked up against them. They had across the country, they had the fatigue, the pace was kind of weird. There was a lot of momentum swings back and forth. And I was just kind of thinking that Clemson would go cold, and they never really got rattled. They didn't play great offense. They didn't shoot the lights out, but they didn't really even dominate the glass, but they did what was most important, which is kind of that Brad Brownell basketball, which is they defended extremely well. Clemson held Stanford to just 6 points in the final 5.5 minutes on the road in a tight game. I mean, that's not luck. That's a team sticking to their identity and sticking to what works and what travels, which is the defense. And that is a team that is staying composed, and a staff like that Brad Brownell that stays composed and is one that you can be excited about in the postseason. I saw some of the comments online about, well, this is going to be a team that disappoints us, but I say let every team have their moment. Whether or not they just disappoint us in the postseason or not, it's really not up to us to say yet. I don't want to count them out before they have their opportunity. And really, another thing that you got to say out loud that really doesn't make any sense from this game is that the the bench had 43 points out of what, 66. It really doesn't make sense that the bench would score that much, but they did. And that's another thing that I believe is going to help Clemson carry them forward into February, late February, and then into March. 43 out of 60 really is kind of absurd, in any game. It kind of makes you think, like, what were the starters doing? But it in a tight road game, everything matters, especially late in the game. And you got to be excited about the guys that can step up. It's just further proof that this team has been built to have anybody step up at any given moment. They don't need that one consistent guy over and over, like the Brad Brownell teams of old. Now it's this team is just so next man up mentality that it's really, really fun to see. I mean, you really don't know. Any given game, you really don't know who's going to step up. One guy is one guy going to take over the game in the last 5 minutes? No, we're not going to see that. And that could hurt him in the postseason, maybe. I mean, we've seen it. They haven't always been great because of that. And we think that may be a little bit of a problem, especially at the end. If you need to go ISO and let somebody take it over and get a foul and get an and one, you haven't really seen that from Clemson. But layered production is what you have seen. Even trying to just stay consistent in what their identity is, even when a certain player is inconsistent. Clemson trusts its rotation and sticks with what works. And the bigger takeaway for me is this team seems to be the embodiment of grit. They are comfortable in the uncomfortable. They don't try to make something out of nothing. They don't try to make something that's not there. They take and they assess the game, and they don't panic when shots don't fall. They rarely, I rarely see them go through just massive droughts, but they don't need to panic when Stanford sped it up and got on a couple of runs. They continue to play their game. And while it is kind of slower pace and not as exciting in some ways, but they stayed connected and they stayed true to their defense, and they made Stanford work for absolutely every single shot. And at the end of the game, they couldn't get it going. So when you're away from home, especially when you're traveling, across the country for back-to-back games, because they got to play California now after this in 2 days. But when you're away from home, this team starts to feel real to me. I mean, again, I know there are some comments about, can they really sustain this in March without having a true superstar? But I'm not going to count them out. There's a reason why this team has won so many games and only has not even a full handful of losses, and is still in a good spot, a great spot in the ACC. So let's talk about specific players here in segment 2. When we come back, we'll talk about who I'm loving right now, who played well last night, and what we can expect from them going forward here on Locked On Clemson.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukelich and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, welcome back in Locked On Clemson, segment 2 here. Before we get into it, I do want to tell you about the Everydayer Club. What are you waiting for? Get in there, check it out. It's a great group of fans that are everydayers just like you that tune into their shows Monday through Friday and that want to talk it up with other fans who are ball knowers. So get in there and be a part of the Everydayer Club, and you get ad-free episodes of the podcast of Locked On Clemson. So I know you're going to love it. Go check it out. And you can find it lockedonclemson.supercast.com, or a link will be in the show notes to learn more. Just give it a second. Check it out. Let me know what you think. I know you're going to love it if you give it a try. All right, segment 2 here. Let's talk about the guys who are really winning me over right now, because the past couple of games has clarified a couple of roles for me, and I want to start there. So Nick Davidson, last night, 16 points, 7 rebounds off the bench because he's really been very inconsistent this year. Was supposed to be one of those guys who was like a solid starter for Clemson, but off the bench on the road in a game that came down to possessions. What I love about Davidson is that he didn't need the game to be about him, and he never really does, but he impacted it. He had rebounds. He finished through contact. He spaced the floor out just enough to get open and to matter when it was needed. And when Clemson needed a bucket, he was the kind of guy that was calm, cool, and collected. It was nice to see him have 16 points last night. He's a mature basketball player. Hasn't been as consistent as we would want, but he's definitely someone that could possibly catch fire. You know how basketball is. There are times earlier on this season where when you look back, it felt like he was thinking too much. He was trying too hard, trying to fit a specific role so well that it actually made things worse, in my opinion. And so now it feels like he's just kind of playing free and just playing the game. And his talent is rising in those situations where he's just, being calm and just doing his thing. So if he can keep doing that through February and into March, you've got another solid guy, whether he's on the bench or not, that could potentially bring you double-digit points and, a lot of rebounds. Huge asset to this team if he can keep it going. Then you got Ace Buckner. He's one of my favorite types of players. When he comes in, he gives you a lot of energy. He seems like he's a very confident player. And most importantly, he doesn't cause a lot of problems on possessions. He doesn't really, he's not really the reason why there's any wasted possessions. He seems to be very mature in his own right, even though he's much younger. But you can trust him, and the staff has shown that they can trust him. And 11 points last night mattered. They weren't empty points. They came within the flow of the game. And defensively, he's constantly engaged and just really doing his best. I would say he plays fast. He plays confident. And for a young guy, he's not reckless. And that kind of stuff matters on the road. And that matters later on down the stretch. And again, it kind of goes back to those two guys stepping up and Clemson really having the opportunity to take this and move it forward without one player just dominating, without one player just being that superstar overall. And when you look back through the game, it was really exciting to watch all the guys. But even Chase Thompson, I haven't mentioned him yet. 10 points, 3 rebounds, a floor space guy, secondary scorer type guy. We really don't know much about him or at least we really haven't talked much about him. And so it was really cool to see what he was able to do, against Stanford last night. Again, we don't talk about him because, they really haven't used him as much. And it was really cool to see, and having that 43 points off the bench is really good. Really, honestly shocking to me. I haven't put Chase Thompson on my radar really because he's kind of been a quiet rotational guy, but you got to like what you've seen. And it really was kind of like a wow moment for this bench. So hopefully they can keep it going forward and, again, move it into next season, or at least into the playoffs and March Madness. Now, another thing I wanted to say is that in segment 3, we'll talk about the games coming up because, we talked about those 5 games and they needed to win 4 out of those 5. Well, this is one of those ones that they needed to win. So it's a great win, and it was a close win, and it was one that they grinded out. What can they do moving forward to, continue to be effective as they finish out this road matchup against California, and then bring it back home against Virginia Tech? A lot of people are worried about that one being a trap game, and then ultimately the Duke Blue Devils in the what we would probably say is the one that's the most difficult game to win. But again, really great win for Clemson. Stanford's not an easy game to win, especially going across the country. And it's been exciting to watch them, watch them win these games and the way that they win them. Although, again, they're not really that pretty, 66, 64, very slow with the way Clemson paces the ball. But just the overall rotation between players is really, really fun and exciting to watch. And I think Brad Brownell has done well. In the comments, we've seen guys talk about, well, Brad Brownell, this should be the year that he wins ACC Coach of the Year. And I agree. I mean, a lot of people thought he may should have won it last year or the year before. I think this year should be that year for him as well. It is really, truly amazing what he has been able to do and how he's been able to build a roster. We kind of joked on the football side of things that Brownell is the guy you wish Dabo would be in the portal. He just goes out there and he finds these key players that end up fitting extremely well with the identity that he wants to play in college basketball. And it's been really exciting to watch. Davidson was one of those guys, and Welling is another guy, and Wallin. There's these guys that weren't originally offered or committed to Clemson as a recruit that are now coming in and being huge impact players. And they all seem to be really enjoying playing for Clemson, going to class at Clemson, living in Clemson. I mean, if you think about all the past dudes that Brownell has brought in, even if they're 1-year dudes, a lot of them, if you still reach out to them on social media and talk to them one-on-one, they love Clemson. And they're so proud and excited, or at least thankful for the opportunity that they had, even if it was just one season. Those are the kind of guys you want to pick up from the portal, the ones that really want to be there, that want to give their all, and are very proud to be Clemson, even if it is just 1 year. I think about Joe Girard and just, the fact that he was really a Syracuse guy through and through, and then he came to Clemson. And it'd be hard to say if he's a bigger Clemson fan or a Syracuse fan because of just how much he promotes Clemson on social media and how excited he is about Clemson basketball. So it's really cool to see what Brad Brownell has done in the transfer portal and how he's built his teams out. I do think he's ACC Coach of the Year. And if he doesn't get voted in, I'll be absolutely shocked. But we'll see. They have a good foothold right now in the top of the ACC. These next 3 games are going to matter big time. So let's talk about them in segment 3. So hang with me, everydayers. Segment 3 right here, Locked on Clemson, coming up. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you have candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the way to go. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your job post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who actually fit your criteria with the skills and the certifications and the location based on what your hiring needs are. So save time because you're spending less energy sorting through a bunch of mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, you can get posts seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that tells it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies just like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show can get $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job in the premium status that it deserves at indeed.com/podcast. That's indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, well, do it the right way with Indeed. This segment or this show is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that's always been a problem, hasn't it? So that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back to where it belongs, into the fans. Everything's quick and easy. You know, I love the zone deals. They allow you to choose a section and Game Time will pick the seats. I know it sounds crazy. You're going to let Game Time pick the seats? I'm telling you, you can save big time. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. All right, segment 3 here, Locked on Clemson. So the question becomes simple. Can Clemson keep this going? I mean, they had a great win against Stanford. Can they keep it going in a road trip that's not always easy in the ACC? Keep stacking these ACC wins. The next 3 games will tell us a lot about what Clemson is capable of. First, they have to stay out west and face the California Golden Bears. And this is a game that, statistically speaking, if you look at the projections and the forecasts and the matchup, that Clemson should win this game. Cal typically struggles to score efficiently, and if Clemson brings the same defensive focus that they did against Stanford, which, I mean, there's no reason to doubt that they can, they should be able to continue that Brad Brownell style defense and smother them. Well, to me, it'll be another win, and it could still be another grind out win. May not be super pretty, maybe mid 60s again. You know, I know it's kind of makes you yawn to think, okay, they get 30 by halftime, but you know, defend. That's all I say. It doesn't matter how many points you score, as long as they score less, and then get out of town. So win this game, defend the ball, get out of town, and come back home to Clemson to face Virginia Tech. That'll be the second game. And that one, to me, is going to be a tough one. You know, Virginia Tech is much better than their record, and they're, to me, is a non-negotiable because it's a home game. You know, you want to try to stack your home game wins for sure. These away games, tough always, especially in conference, but Clemson can win these 2. Clemson can definitely win Virginia Tech, statistically speaking. But to me, they need to definitely win it. It's a game that Clemson has to handle well. Home court advantage, again, defensive edge is probably going to be Clemson's forte for most of their matchups. And with what we saw against Stanford, the depth is looking even better as we continue to go on. This is where Clemson needs to, in my opinion, look like the better team, be the better team, get that home win, prove that, you know, this winning power that they have and this consistency that they have going can keep it rolling. because it really is all about that confidence and that pacing and the play with each other, and the teamwork that is going to help build them to their biggest test of this stretch, and that is against the Duke Blue Devils. I mean, when are they not the biggest threat? When are they not the biggest obstacle in their way? Because, Clemson really, they're not on Duke Blue Devil level as far as basketball. Duke is one of the best basketball teams ever, right? But let's be honest, Clemson, can hang with them. They don't have to necessarily win this game. We talked about it on the radio. My friend Mickey Plyler on the morning show talked about it. We were thinking get away with just one win out of this stretch or one loss out of this stretch, and that'll be a major win for the program. Well, they definitely have that ability to do so. Just one loss, which should be to Duke, which is the one we kind of predicted and suspected, then that is a win. So out of these 3 games, 3-0 would be, man, a statement. That would be for sure a big time statement. 2-1 over this stretch is a for sure win, and one that I would expect them to be able to do. Handle these next 2 games, get ready for the biggest test of the season, possibly. And, whether or not you win it or not, I mean, again, it's going to be difficult in Duke, maybe almost impossible with how the referees are. But, what matters to me, whether or not they win the Duke game, is just how they continue to play. If Clemson can turn, the Duke game into a half-court grind and stay within striking distance, anything can happen. They can give themselves a chance. If they can get their bench to score, I mean, nobody's saying their bench has to score over 50% of the points like they did last night. But if they can do that and have a confident bench scoring, then that's all you really can ask for on a road game or on a game against Duke. So that's where I land. The Stanford game last night wasn't pretty, but it was important. Is another win, stacking those ACC wins. The right players are stepping up, and even the players that you weren't really expecting to step up were stepping up. So it continues to show just how versatile and deep this roster is. The next 3 games are definitely very manageable for Clemson. If they can continue to stay disciplined, the sky's the limit, if you will. This team definitely knows how to grind. They know how to play tough. They know how to work through struggles on the court, and they know how to win. That's what really, to me, I love watching this team. And it understands that. It doesn't worry about style points. It doesn't worry about playing hero ball. It just trusts what Brad Brownell is doing. They trust each other. They trust what their staff is telling them to do, and they're playing great basketball. That's where Clemson is right now. And honestly, it is a great place to be, one that is super exciting to watch, and that I'm looking forward to this Saturday to see more. So I don't think I have a flight this Saturday. I'm going to try to open up my schedule Saturday and then also Sunday so I can watch the Super Bowl. We're almost towards the end of this week, so hopefully you had a good week, and I will see you on Friday. But that's it for Locked On Clemson's Thursday edition of the show. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and follow to the podcast so you get all the latest updates. If you never miss an episode, well, again, just take a chance. Check out the Everydayer Club. It's built for you. Our staff here at Locked On Clemson, they've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how they can enhance the experience for you and make an everydayer feel special. So check out the Everydayer Club. For those of you on video, we'll send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, we're going to send you over, or at least you should send yourself over to the second listen, which is Locked On College Football. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you on Friday, and we'll see you at the top of the hill.